Hey there, welcome back to the Intergenerational Trauma Therapist Show. We are today going to talk about the Courageous Way Phase 1 because I just got back last week from a training that I did in Northern British Columbia, and it was so impactful for the people who attended, but it also had a lot of impact on me. So I wanted to share that with you and have you kind of experience maybe a little bit of what the participants experienced. So, in order to get to where I was going, I had to fly from Winnipeg to Vancouver, Vancouver up to a little island in the northern coast. And then I took a ferry over to the island where the training was held. So, it was a really new experience for me. It's a beautiful area. If you ever get a chance to travel there, go because it's amazing. The people are amazing, very friendly, very open. So it was just a really good experience. It was also a really good experience because I did a 2-day training on phase 1 of the intergenerational trauma program. And this is the part that looks at calming the family nervous system through autonomic regulation and approving the foundation of attachment. So, some of the feedback that I got was people who've dealt with a lot of depression and shame felt lighter and lifted because they learned about maladaptive coping skills, they learned about autonomic regulation, and just had this greater sense of self attunement and awareness. So that was amazing. So, phase 1 of the Courageous Way, again, is based on increasing autonomic regulation and improving secure attachment strategies and building more connection within the family. So, there may be improved regulation, but it's not maybe not completely regulated because we haven't resolved the parent's unresolved trauma, which is one of the main mechanisms of the transmission of intergenerational trauma. So the other part is that autonomic dysregulation is really the root of what causes the disruptions in attachment and the transmission to the generations coming. So it's really important to have that foundation and have it be very, very strong for people who are healing from intergenerational trauma. So the concept, we know that autonomic dysregulation is basically your fight, flight, freeze, fawn, numbing responses that occur. They're adaptive when we're under high stress or in instances of trauma or crisis, but they become maladaptive when we get stuck in those types of responses. And it has a huge impact on family dynamics when people are stuck in those. So this is where intergenerational trauma has a huge impact on the nervous system and particularly the autonomic nervous system. So it creates increased reactivity or shutdown. So there's more fight or flight and there's more numbing, kind of checking out or cycling between those two. And this dysregulation interferes with attachment. It's nearly impossible for a child or teen to connect with a caregiver when they're in a fight or flight mode or when they're numbed or kind of checked out. So this is where that attachment and regulation become kind of two sides of the same coin. We need both of those to overcome the impacts of intergenerational trauma. So, chronic dysregulation, this is a main root cause of the transmission of intergenerational trauma. And yes, the unresolved trauma of the caregiver is also a root cause, but it's because of this autonomic dysregulation and the impacts that it has on the family. So it's really important to understand and address those autonomic responses to improve the parent's emotion regulation and ability to foster connection, attunement, and co-regulation with the child in order to support attachment. So the foundations of the Courageous Way, there's basically 4 pillars or 4 parts to this method, and those are improving autonomic regulation, increasing attachment, supporting child and teen development, and building connection and family resilience. So, this is the pathway that we use to heal intergenerational trauma and resolve those effects and integrate the family experience and the family history, the culture, all of that to create healthy people here and now that also prevents the transmission of intergenerational trauma to the following generations. So the autonomic regulation, it is the foundation of this whole program. And it's really important for our clients to really understand this and understand how it impacts their relationships. So, this is where having this knowledge and being able to be more self aware and self attuned can create huge changes for people that maybe had no idea why they were so anxious or angry or why they were so kind of numb. So, interestingly, I have had special requests at this training to work with another community that is in the same area. So, I hopefully will be going back. I'd love to go back. It's beautiful there. And I've had requests from India, Afghanistan. So, it really showcases the broad application of the program and the demand for this approach. And the amazing thing about this, probably from my experience working with indigenous people and people who are not indigenous and just a lot of different cultures from many different perspectives, is that it's a framework that we can use in order to impact the autonomic regulation and the attachment, but we can also weave in cultural perspectives and beliefs and the values of the people that you're working with. So I can't go into a community and teach them their culture and how it fits into this program. I can teach them the program and then help them fit their culture and their beliefs in it to make it even more impactful and consistent for their population or their people. So it really helped me understand like why it's so important to specialize in doing this kind of work. I think a lot of people think that we can just treat the child, build some attachment, kind of support the parent, or we can support the parent, or we can refer them to somebody else. But it's not a comprehensive approach that gets efficient and effective results to do that. It's kind of compartmentalized, and we're just hoping that the positive effects kind of root between the relationship. This model is an intentional way to impact that relationship and that connection to restore the health and vitality in the parent child relationship and in the family system. So, there is a huge growing need for therapists to specialize in this kind of treatment in intergenerational trauma therapy because of the world events that we're living with. So we have extremely high rates of intergenerational trauma internationally. We look at Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, Afghanistan, all of those areas have been, and many more have been significantly impacted by war, forced migration, all of those that are hugely impactful on families. So there is a huge need for specialization in this type of therapy. And it can really deepen the therapist's understanding of actually a really complex situation with complex trauma in the parents, trauma, developmental trauma in the children. And it enhances their ability to provide very effective and tailored interventions to their clients. So that's the important, we're not taking something that worked over here for somebody with complex trauma and trying to apply it to a family. We're taking interventions that are specifically designed for intergenerational trauma. So the reason I got that positive feedback is that the Courageous Way is specifically tailored to treat intergenerational trauma and to maximize effectiveness and to do it efficiently. So if you have 2 days, by the first day, there were positive comments and there were things that people noticed about themselves, and all these things that are so important for our clients to be able to grasp quickly because of chronic disempowerment. People with intergenerational trauma and that are impacted by those difficulties typically have had a lot of disempowering experiences with medical systems, education, professionals everywhere, that they typically are very disempowered and they lose hope. So, one of the things that we want to do really quickly is to restore a sense of hope and give them a solid foundation to believe in and trust that hope. So the phase one that we did is aimed at the main foundation of intergenerational trauma therapy, which is that increasing their autonomic regulation, helping them be more self aware and more attuned to where they're at in their autonomic nervous system so that they can support themselves and their family members and their children. So the way it's presented really helps decrease shame because those maladaptive coping strategies that we all have, but sometimes they become more rooted, they can become a real source of shame for people. And they may have been in generations many times that the sense of shame can be really, really heavy, and the impacts on the family system can be kind of shame producing events. And then they misunderstand their own trauma responses. They may think that they're drinking because they're weak or they're a bad person, but this is a self regulation strategy that has been overused and it's no longer useful. So it provides a real foundation for self-awareness and a huge path for healing. And it does it relatively quickly. Like there's a lot of deeper work that needs to be done later, but getting that hope and that possibility, that encouragement and that self-awareness in there is really critical for starting out in a positive way in therapy. So the benefits of specialization, they are mainly for our clients, but they're also for us too, because when we have improved client outcomes, it helps reduce burnout, it helps us feel engaged and helps us really enjoy our jobs. So when we have those specialized neuroscience backed techniques, it helps us to get those improved client outcomes. It also increases our professional credibility. When we have a specialization, we're recognized as being not an expert, but we're recognized as being a specialist in this area so that we may have answers that other people who don't have that specialty won't have. And again, just the satisfaction in our work, the reduced burnout, and the highly focused area of study is just, it's really important to us as therapists. That may be why I do a lot of training and I get a lot of specialized training because it's a way to keep fresh and keep moving forward in my own learning and training. So the path to certification, so basically this is a three-phase intervention. Phase 1 is calming the family nervous system. Phase 2 is addressing the unresolved co- complex trauma of the adults in the family. Phase 3 is based on addressing the trauma in the child and teen level of the family and building family connection. So, since I did this workshop, I have decided that instead of the to complete the certification, you need all three phases, 1, 2, and 3. So you need that entire foundation to be certified as an intergenerational trauma specialist. But just seeing the impact of this group, I've decided that I'm gonna break it up so people can move through it slower if they need to move through it slower, which is wonderful because then you really have those skills kinda nailed down rather than just kind of blasting through a complex intervention. So they can complete the 3 phases over a longer period of time, or if they're a person that is just working in, say, child welfare, they could just do phase 1 and do the workshops and that level of training for their clients. If you're a therapist that only works with adults, you can use the part for from phase 2 to resolve the adults' unresolved trauma. Now, when you do it all together, you've got a very effective system that creates consistency between the adult's interventions and the child's interventions so that one isn't talking about relief in art therapy and what the other one isn't talking about relief from brain spotting. So it's all streamlined. You can use those techniques along with this, but it's all streamlined so that what the parent is their self-attunement to themselves using polyvagal theory, relational neuroscience, will help them be more attuned to their children, and they're learning the same type of framework and the same type of language. Of course, it's made more child friendly for children, but that's the benefit of having all three of these phases if you're working with the entire family. So, in order to complete that specialization, it's taking the three phases, receiving consultation, and submitting some case studies. So, it's just really that workshop really impacted me, that I really need to get this out and need to get it out in maybe smaller chunks for people to take it easier by doing just phase one or just phase two, or taking them in a slower path that fits their lifestyle and their work much better. It also helps them receive support over a longer period of time rather than just 6 months. They could do it over 18 months or however it works for them to receive that support and that learning. So they can just go at their own pace. So, the value of certification is becoming part of a compassionate community. Having that support is really important with this type of work because it's very complex and the things that we're dealing with are very difficult sometimes. So, they're very complex because it's woven into the family system, and it can be quite complex within the child or teens because of the developmental impacts on all those domains that we have to be aware of when to know when we need to refer out or put in additional interventions to support that development. So getting that cutting edge knowledge and how polyvagal theory fits directly with attachment is important. And then you can also position yourself as a specialist in the field, which is going to be really important as time goes on when more and more people become aware of intergenerational trauma and what is the best way to treat that. So the program comes with tons of workbooks. It comes with workbooks for phase one and two, and then phase three has three different workbooks. One's for children, one's for teens, and one's for the parent to support the child and teens work. So you don't have to spend the same 13 years I spent trying, and money trying to figure all this out for the best approach to support these complex families. It's right there for you. So if you're interested in this, just send me a message, an email, whatever platform we connect on. Just let me know that, and I'll let you know what I have coming up so that you can be involved in that when it actually comes out. So, just to recap, phase one of the Courageous Way, it is based on the autonomic regulation of the parent's central nervous or autonomic nervous system, and allowing that to co-regulate the children to improve attachment. This is the foundational component to healing in intergenerational trauma. If we don't improve the autonomic regulation in all family members, we can't improve those attachments in the family. So the attachment will get better naturally, but with additional support if that autonomic regulation is there. So it's this phase one is the absolute foundation of treating intergenerational trauma. So I'd love to hear about your thoughts or experiences related to autonomic dysregulation in families and trying to increase attachment, or anything that we've talked about. If you've traveled to northern BC, it's just a beautiful area. So next week, we will be doing a video on embracing your unique skills and why you're ready for certification. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed all the travel and meeting some new wonderful people. And I hope you have a beautiful day.